Hi everyone, I hope you're having a lovely Ascension Day and Feast Day of Fatima. I've got on a bit of a roll with the readings now, and having read out Nina Runikova's High Priestess earlier, in the early hours of the morning, I was inspired to go back to her master, her original occult master, Mebes, and his Tarot Majors, because I've not quite finished this yet. We're up to the Moon, the 18th Arcanum. So here we go. This is the pathway between Yesod and Netzach. As Levi says, we must examine carefully the effects of the influences of the moon in her several phases. According to Paul Christian, this Arcanum, the number 90, is analogous to twilight, deceptions, to expresses in the divine world the abysses of the infinite. Ouspensky says, "Dread fell upon me. I sensed the presence of a mysterious world, a world of hostile spirits, of corpses rising from graves, of wailing ghosts. In this pale moonlight, I seemed to feel the presence of apparitions. Someone watched me from behind the towers, and I knew it was dangerous to look back." The letter of the alphabet corresponding to this arcanum is Sadiq, its numerical value 90. The astrological correspondence is the sign of Aquarius. The hieroglyph of the arcanum is a cover, but not in the sense of protection against weathering, but a cover that closes over us like a trap door, something which oppresses us, deprives us of the free air, limits our freedom and our horizon. Wanting to lift out of this, we hit our heads against the obstacle. As soon as some joy appears, immediately comes the threat. We only start something to feel this oppression. The picture, mysteriously explaining this arcanum to us, is called by the scientist crepusculum, the twilight. Its common name is the moon. At the very top of the picture, the moon pours its quiet light hopelessly, mathematically, directing its cone of rays in a strict system. But moonlight is reflected light. Where is the source of light, you exclaim? We want to receive the light directly from this. The picture answers you. You are subordinate to the hierarchical law. You do not have the right to light from the source. It is released to you by the nearest hierarchical authority. Be satisfied with your portion of light, you who voluntarily plunged yourself into the illusory plan of reproduction of binaries by falling. The only light accessible to us is transmitted to each of us by the nearest hierarchical nucleus. Shall we be content with what we have received, not forgetting that because of the fall, we are voluntarily immersed in the illusory world of the multiplication of binaries? This explains the first title of the Arcanum, that is, Occult Hierarchy. You peer at the dusk, and in the background you see the binary of towers, or the binary of pyramids. Between these two towers there passes a winding path of your being, as if only for that it is strewn with light sand to make visible the stains of blood with which it abounds. You, having just understood the first headline of the Arcana, Hierarchia Occulta, are thinking about the strange impression this blood made on you. Someone was losing vitality, and this strikes us with the consciousness of the weakness that makes us cherish the gross resources of life condensed to the extreme. On the one hand, these resources seem to be ours, and on the other hand, The very rudeness of these resources puts them at the disposal of everyone who wants to take their belongings to us as a reference point for hostile implementations. On our blood we can evolve. This is terrible. Who can evolve us? The answer is ready in the foreground of the picture. There is a wolf, mirrored to the left, who has openly declared himself our enemy. On the right, we see a dog that recently flattered us and imposed himself as our friend. Now we understand who is driving us, declared enemies and false friends. Are they completely free in their terrible deeds? No, something is not good for them. They howl at the moon. They are constrained by the nearest hierarchical authority, which gives us light. So if they are constrained, why should we be afraid of them? Because we are like Cancer the crab that just comes out of its puddle and quickly returns to it. This tendency to retreat, to backtrack, is that it makes us subject to bewitchment. Realizing the second title of the picture, Secret Enemies, we ask, are there the same dangers in nature? Yes, there is still physical danger from natural conditions, which is sometimes as hidden from backward Cancer as astral threats. These pericular occulta, hidden dangers, which is the third heading of the Arcanum. We proceed to the arithmetic analysis of the Arcanum. 18 equals 1 plus 17, and 18 equals 17 plus 1. The divine essence, 1, and hope, 17, coming from the metaphysical plane, are sufficient to determine the existence of the hierarchical law. Did I say that right? Divine essence 1, hope 17, coming from the metaphysical plane, are sufficient to determine the existence of the hierarchical law, which is 18. The one active principle, nothing could be expected of an inactive principle, creates the organs for its activity according to their hierarchical rank and according to their progressive departure from the primordial source. The triplane man, with intuition, 17, clearly perceives the astral dangers that threaten, which is 18. Active nature, when we read its warnings, 17, reveals to us the imminence of the dangers, 18, which remain hidden from the ignorant. 18 equals 2 plus 16, and 18 equals 16 plus 2. The metaphysical substance and the method of logical exclusion, 16, determines the constitution of the hierarchy, 18, in the world of ideas. The principle of polarization and the possibility of astral constraint, 16, reveal the mystery of enchantment, 18. The latter is possible only when the subject is passive and the operator is active. The possibility of the physical destruction, 16, of the forms created by nature constitutes the called danger, 18. 18 equals 3 plus 15, and 18 equals 15 plus 3. The triplicity of the one principle and the logic of the metaphysical construction, 15, of the second family, determine the hierarchical laws, 18, for our world. The formation of these laws is linked to the mystery of the Trinity and the logical application of this mystery. The mysteries of birth and the features of the Nahash element, 15, are components of the process of bewitchment, 18. The creativity of nature and the law to karma, 15, influencing this creativity, constitutes the totality of physical hazards, 18. Eighteen equals 4 plus 14, and 18 equals 14 plus 4. The processes of formation and deduction, 14, determine the constitution of hierarchy, 18. The principle of authority and the ability to balance its activity and its passivity. 14. Cause one man to become an opponent of another. 18. 18 equals 5 plus 13, and 18 equals 13 plus 5. The knowledge of good and evil, together with the permanence of the superior principles. 13. Suffice for the establishment of the hierarchy. 18. The pentagrammatic character of the human being and its subjection to the laws of death. 13. Bewitching. 18. 18 equals 6 plus 12, and 18 equals 12 plus 6. The understanding of the law of analogy and the expectation of the Messiah. 12. Compel man, even superficially, to admit the hierarchical law. 18. The primacy given to freedom in relation to mercy, which is 12, can lead men to practice bewitching. 18. However, the primacy given to mercy, 12, in relation to freedom of the human will, for example, to pray for enemies, undo all the traps of opponents. 18. To pray for our enemies, to undo all traps. 18 equals 7 plus 11, and 18 equals 11 plus 7. The essence of hierarchy 18 is that in it the subtle governs the dense, and possesses the power 11 to permeate it. The possibility of astral aggression 18 is that the man who has already won victory on himself uses both his own strength and that of the current 11 in promoting its ends. We consider as a danger 18 the possibility of losing what we intend to possess as a property, and whose destruction by the forces of nature 11 is normal. 18 equals 8 plus 10, and 18 equals 10 plus 8. The liberation of the world scale, together with the Great Testament, give the key to the hierarchical law 18. The conditions of the ethical life of man and the knowledge of Kabbalah make it possible for the use of bewitching 18. 18 equals 9 plus 9. The hierarchical graduation 18 is the consequence of the meeting between two protectors, one less and another higher. The least protects the interests of any particular organ, the highest the interests of the general organism, tracing for this to his subordinate directives which may not be advantageous to the organ under the care of the first protector. So what's good for the masses may not be good for the individual, or vice versa. The hierarchy law gives priority to general interests in relation to individuals, and thus determines the triumph of one 9 over another 9. An initiated human being, only in self-protection, can easily be bewitched. Easily bewitched by another who's initiated in the mysteries of Baphomet. A particular organism saves its physical resources using probability calculation. Nature, which has the knowledge of all the data, calculates the certainties. The second 9 wins over the first 9, and this is called danger on the physical plane 18. This analysis gives us some points of support for a better understanding of the Arcanum. We will not deal with the physical dangers. We shall confide ourselves to the hierarchical law and the process of bewitching. The hierarchical law. The unitary worldview of the spiritual schools has the following main thesis. The principles are clothed in laws. Laws work with facts. Clothing without a carrier is not capable of life. They may serve as a scarecrow for some time for sparrows, but even those in the end will recognize its powerlessness. Sorry, I've lost my I'll find it. Materialistic schools say differently. They think that a complex of facts give rise to a law, that a complex of laws gives rise to a principle. In other words, they think that the strong-willed monad of the chain is an illusion created by a series of facts that are within this chain. For them, a cell is more real than an organ is more real than an organism. According to the Unitary spiritualist schools, life is hidden behind its visible manifestations and, sometimes even independent of these. Materialists assert that life comes from matter, from the inanimate. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. Here is the guiding text of living Unitarianism. Proponents of this direction, of course, will conduct the hierarchy based on a priori recognition of the existence of its starting point. There is an archetype, and therefore there are both man and nature. There is a boss, and he has subordinates. There is a leader conducting certain volitional impulses, and there are people gathered around this leader who are ready to formally and really defend the conduct of these impulses. There is a teacher, and the school appears. There is a mental monad, it formed of an astrosome, and a latter made itself a physical body. Materialists proclaim that a human being represents only the synthesis of their cells. If we imagine everything existing for only one moment, then it will be equally possible for us to carry out one or another system. The materialist will tell you, show me a person who is not a synthesis of their cells. You tell me that the astrosome of the fetus vampirizes the elements of subplanes of the physical environment. So you yourself admit that, apart from the existence of this environment, incarnation could not take place. Who forbids me to think that individual consciousness here is a direct consequence of the state of convergence of the elements of the environment? Who forbids me to think that every crowd has a boss because of the very functions of the collective existence of the crowd? Now, instead of talking about a particular life, a phenomenon of only ephemeral duration, let's talk about a longer period, for example, an entire epoch. Studying the history of the human masses and the history of the hierarchical collectivities, it is verified that the predominance of mass always leads to divergences, to the disintegration of the collectivity, to death. The hierarchical system, on the other hand, leads to consolidation of collectivity, unity, the search for a common target. Disorganized waves flow through the masses. In hierarchical collectivities, circulate the ordered currents of a telesma, from the Greek word telos, the primordial substance from which all was made, and which, according to Hermes Trismegistus, is at the same time the heaven and the earth, that is, the subtle and the dense. Telesma. In a parliament whose members are chosen by oppositions appearing from the outset, and, during the existence of the parliament, not only the parties fight among themselves, but also the fractions of these parties. No parliament in the world gives real powers to its president. It only instructs them to ensure certain regulations, and even these are soon infringed by the parliamentarians themselves. Compare these anarchic manifestations with the life of a normal and healthy family, or of a community based on the patriarchal principle, that is, organized according to the hierarchical law, and in which each member is ready to sacrifice something of himself for the sake of his community. It is said that even a fox whose leg or tail has been caught in a trap will cut it with its own teeth to save what is really important: life. It could be said that the two philosophies, that of the spiritualist and that of the materialist, form a great binary. In the history of mankind, we may even find attempts to neutralize it. Spiritualists say that everything comes from on high, that everything was created by the ascending triangle, and that the sun is the father of everything. The materialists claim that everything comes from Bagsaw, from the triangle descending, created through adaptation, that the moon is the mother of all. In this discussion, the pantheists enter saying the solution lies in the centre of the Star of Solomon, in the Stauros, the symbol of the Gnostic law, of the fertilization of the passive by the active. Both triangles existed before us. We already find them as instruments for our use. The key of our power is in the Stauros, depending on how we will act with telesma, this substance transmitting both the constructiveness of the active and the reaction of the passive. Both opponents have reason, for the Baphomet's father is the sun and the mother the moon. But it is the wind that carries him in his bosom, this same wind that allows us to breathe, and thanks to which we all can live. We do not seek the principle of all principles. We do not intend to decide which is the beginning and the end. Do we not care about the origin with the parents? We live and need to learn to live in the field of action of the androgynous sun. Which of the three currents must we unite? Spiritualist, materialist, or pantheist? We will follow the example of the Egyptian schools. To a point. Insofar as our occult hermetic work goes, we shall bow before Hermes Trismegistus. This we will adopt the synthesis of the three philosophical currents. We will be materialists, supporting ourselves firmly on the physical plane. For the magician, the physical plane is a valuable point of support to allow him to create facts from other facts. We will be pantheistic when we want the forms to create the other forms, when we want to affirm our pentagram rights, not as slaves of nature, but as free children of God. However, as soon as we feel that our self is extinguished before something greater, manifesting as soon as we overtake our attraction to the form and are drawn to the world of ideas, we will become audaciously spiritualists, for then we will belong to the kingdom of the Father, the Son, the Yod, the spark. We can ask ourselves which of these three planes man belongs to, according to the essence of his nature. What essentially is man? The body, the personality, or his aspiration to the high, that high where man seems to dissolve into the universal and infinite? We cannot answer this question. We can only offer words, and these are not capable to give such an answer. Each one has to look for it for himself. As for us, we can only say that the body is more impermanent and has less power than personality, that personalities are united on the basis of common ideas, and that sentiments, for the sake of these ideas, a human being voluntarily performs the fox or tail role of the aforementioned fox. Let's not be the tail, eh? In relation to these problems, it would be good and even necessary to meditate on what was said in the Arcanum 11 concerning the fall of souls. We will further add that a pure spiritualist will undoubtedly be an absolutist in his conception of hierarchy. To a pantheist, the idea of the kingdom of the spiritual monad, the Eastern kingdom limited by the reaction of matter. According to a materialist, finally, every essential subject of the universe and everything that happens in time and space results from voting the respective cells. The external rules concerning the achievements of the spiritual hierarchy have already been formulated in the study of the Arcanum 3, the Arcanum of Sacred Magic. Okay, bewitching. Let me just see how much more we've got. If one wanted to characterize the 3 symbolic degrees of Masonic initiation exclusively from the point of view of the ability to influence another being, I would say that the degree of apprentice teaches one to be strong within oneself, that is, to fight against one's own weaknesses, gradually overcoming them. This degree aims to develop the active side in oneself. I would say that the degree of companion teaches how to discover and learn to exploit others' weaknesses when we already learn to overcome our own. Teaches us to know how to profit from the ignorance and inertia of others. I would say finally that the Master degree teaches that only operations in which our knowledge and active power repose in the same field the ignorance and inertia of the adversary. In other words, if we are intellectually capable and possess the necessary knowledge, we will choose the confrontation with our adversary in the intellectual field, knowing that he is there, more weak, and consequently we will carry it wherever we want. However, we will avoid physical struggle because muscles may be stronger than ours. If we know well the technique of some procedure, it will be in this detrimental field that we will try to face our adversary, thus avoiding any possible disputes. These general principles are especially important in the processes we will define as exploitation by the force of astral and physical resources of an incarnated human being by another incarnate human being. This is really important because more and more people are learning to harness these powers, and if you don't understand that they're using them against you, or even if you do understand, but because you're very empathetic, you express greater weakness than is really true. Imagine on the one hand someone who neglects their own possessions, leaving them unsupervised, or an empire that, having colonies on various continents, leaves them without any organisation or protection. Imagine, on the other hand, someone to guard and take good care of your property, or a country to perfectly administer its colonies, being in contact with them continuously and always prepared to protect them against any aggression. Let us assume that the second man or the second country wants to take advantage of the situation of the first. Clearly, he could do so easily. Even though both sides are equally passive and disorganized, if one of them becomes active for a while or assaults the other, he will gain advantage. The importance of vigilance. It is true that the other may also awaken from its inertia and repel the attack, but by then it has already suffered losses. This is the whole secret of bewitching success. One is awake, the other is asleep. Don't get caught napping. That's the lesson of this. Bewitching always attaches to the physical plane or lower astral subplanes. Bewitchments for awakening a passion, causing illness or death, a material or other ruin, or hamper useful work, etc. Since these activities are linked to the lower universe, the very term bewitching already sounds bad. It is always a very despicable operation and dense to demand a solid point of support. The process is as follows. A volitive entity is created according to the Sephirotic scheme. The world absolute of this entity belongs in its entirety to the operator. The influence of this world must permeate into the worlds of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asya of the victim. However, the operator's absolute world is connected to its 3 other worlds. Therefore, the operator must be able to connect his Bria, Yetzirah, and Asya with the corresponding worlds of the victim, taking advantage of this transient inertia of the absolute world. Thus, the victim's 3 lower worlds will be like temporary organs of a new entity composed of the operator and the victim. After that, the task of the operator is a certain auto-suggestion. The operator suggests, for example, an ethical disease to that part of the new compound Bria which previously belonged to the Bria independent of the victim. A disease of form to that part of the ordinary Yetzirah who formerly comprised the independent Yetzirah of the victim, and a physical disease to the corresponding part of Vatsya. We might ask whether it is possible to seize the whole of the three alien worlds. We will say that getting hold of the whole is not necessary. It suffices for the operator to subjugate only a small part and contagious with an illness, letting it spread to other organs previously belonging to the victim, while at the same time protecting the organs that now also enter in the composition of the entity they have in common. It is known that an ethical transgression caused by some particular reason can destroy harmony in the soul of a weak individual, that a small defect can ruin the whole of a shape, and that a microbe, upon penetrating a cell, can infect the entire organism. From all of the above, it can be deduced that the matter held by the operator, intentionally infected, must possess in itself, for the occurrence of the contagion, some important elementary aspects of the victim or of one of its main organs, functionally related to the phenomena that the operator wants to trigger. In other words, to bewitch on the ethical plane, e.g. for a proud man, it is important to seize the elements connected with his self-love. Find his weak spot. For bewitching on the plane of form, someone whose main characteristic is aesthetic sensibility, it is important to introduce into the world of Yetzirah the element of deformity. See how dangerous it is. To provoke passion or cause illness or death, bewitching the victim's Asiya world, some of his red blood cells give more results than something more superficial, such as, for example, an epithelium fragment. We're not going to do this. This is sorcery. But people might try to do it to you. So understand that you might need to protect yourself and be vigilant to this. It's really important, and understanding how to banish demons. But anyway, it is also important that these elements, in themselves insignificant but coming from the person involved, are artificially linked to the whole organism, even by means of an operation on a plane different from that to which the elements in the operator's possession belong. Again, we're not going to do this, like having hair from the victim and making a wax doll. No, no, no. The material of the Asiya world is insufficient by itself, and it's completed through the world of Yetzirah. Suppose that the operator, for some reason, wants to suggest to the patient a sensation of permanent fear. He doesn't know what the patient is afraid of, yet he knows what scares him. Then the operator prepares the whole composite entity, his and the victim's, to feel the fright, and as far as is possible causes fear in himself. It will also penetrate the body of the victim. When fear has pervaded the person well, the operator is free from both fear and fright. He will do so on the condition that he is not himself sensitive to fright. Otherwise, she will be inoculated with the fear that has been associated with the ease of being frightened. Of course, it is voodoo. And there's always a danger, ever present, when trying to commit black magical acts of voodoo, of the so-called returning force in the process of bewitching, which results from an attempt to inoculate in someone a weakness to which the operator himself is more sensitive than the victim. In this case, everything will fall back on the operator. A man who fears for his own safety will receive the return stroke. If he attempts to bewitch another to some disgrace on the physical plane. A man who easily falls in love, enticing another to provoke love, will fall in love madly and without any hope of reciprocity, etc. So, if you want to, you've got to be a psychopath to perform voodoo. The operator secures himself against the return stroke by placing a second victim. Oh, I'm not going to say how you do this. The means to be immune to aggression is always the same. Be active, be vigilant, do not be half asleep, don't be concentrating on something else, don't be caught napping. A watchful man inside his home soon realizes when a thief wants to penetrate it. Amen. You have to be active on the mental plane. You must pray, especially pray for your enemies. Who now for his enemies does not form plans of revenge, and who does not form plans of revenge loses the habit of assigning such plans to their fellow men. Whoever does not attribute bad thoughts to others is not subject to fear, and such a person will hardly be bewitched. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. See, there's reasons for these things. It is necessary to be active in the astral plane, concentrated in certain forms, chosen or created by ourselves. Thus, the forms created by others cannot be imposed on us. It's necessary to know clearly what we want, so that in our confusion we are not implanted by the desires of others. If we sincerely love a being chosen by our heart, a deceptive simulation of love cannot be imposed on us. If we join an egregore that fully corresponds to our spiritual aspirations, we will not be impelled to another, more strange, that perhaps would be as harmful to us. To be active in the physical plane is to train our body to produce a quality and quantity of life force for certain purposes, and for our bodies to monofunctional mode. To function well, I think I meant there. In this way, they will oppose any bewitchment. Let us remember once and for all that an inactive and amorphous human being, a being who dissipates all planes of existence, is more likely to bewitch than any other. Zombie nations. A worker in the field of ideas, in the field of form, or in the field of effort, his body is protected by a solid armour against any aggression. In it, the word of Absolute permeates the three others. It is individualized, it resembles a closed system. To the external world it is always a Yod. He becomes a Hey only when, according to his will, he is receptive to the higher influx. In life, one cannot act like the crab that retreats to its puddle. If we know if we are active, then we will fear neither the wolf nor the dog, and on the way we will not spill a drop of our blood that someone could use against us. We will limit our submission only to the binary of the pyramids, and we will submit, consciously and voluntarily, to the hierarchy of two lunar rays. Knowing the source of this reflected light, we will learn to venerate through it the primordial source. That is what tradition and the occult experience teach us. Let us see what profane science teaches us. No. He describes an experiment carried out in 1891 by Colonel de Rochas, if you wanted to look that up. Notes on the 18th Arcanum. So much occultism, natural and practical magic is associated with the moon that it can be disconcerting to see it presented within the tarot course as a negatively charged body of woe. Even though if we get things right, it won't be. We can learn to, as he says, understand and direct and receive as strong individuals the reflected rays, and through those worship the primordial source. We will recall that Rosicrucian training exercises aiming for the stimulation of active imagination were designed specifically to overcome what was seen as an overriding lunar influence on the human psyche, and in particular somnambulic trance and hypnotic states. In the moon, we are made to see the force of the unconscious over the conscious, of forgetfulness over remembering, and sleep over waking. By actively reinforcing memory and consciously directing the imagination to the point of controlling one's own dreams and astral travels, the individual brings him or herself under more solar than lunar influences. The 18th Arcanum also draws our attention to the problem of inversion, of retrograde movement, of slipping backwards rather than moving in a continuous progression, of moving in a way that is contrary to life. Whilst the sun and stars are considered to be creative and revealed luminaries respectively, the moon is openly reflective. It sends back an image of this true light from its dead and dusty surface. The horror of backsliding is well known in Orthodox religions, but it can also be difficult to avoid. For example, during periods of great stress, trauma, sickness, upheaval, grief, or boredom, when the impulse to slide back is likely to affect us most strongly. In this backward motion, the moon, with its sense of hopelessness and tragedy, is shown to be the antithesis of the star. The friend of the moon and its backward inclination is materialism in all its expression, just as the opposing force is composed of spiritual consciousness and intuitive thought. Whilst the sun represents creative consciousness and the star is an expression of revelation, shining through the darkness, the moon is inorganic intelligence and together with the earth forms an inseparable couple. The Arcanum of the moon teaches us to strive beyond the limits of materialistic intelligence and make a leap from its hypnotic sphere into that of the following Arcanum, which is the sun. Henry Bergson is quoted to effect in Meditations on the Tarot. You may speculate as intelligently as you will on the mechanism of intelligence. You will never, by this method, succeed in getting beyond it. You may get something more complex, but not something higher nor even something different. You must take things by storm. You must thrust intelligence outside itself by an act of will. You're going to poke your head out of your shell. This action, described by Bergson, is analogous to the Kabbalistic idea of kavanah, a form of meditation which probes the dark depths which surround it. It is the action whereby wisdom, hokmah, is wedded to intelligent understanding, binah, in the generation of the occult Sephiroth, Darth, which Tomberg equates with intuition. The development of strong intuition is an express goal of hermetic study, though it is also fair to say that some people are naturally born with this gift of the spirit. So that's the moon. We did it. So the only way is up now.